Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Pesachim. We are up to Perik Yud Mishnah Vav. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'ilun Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana Aranbai and Eliyahu ben Burchai Israelov, Menuchatam Began Eden, Amen. We are up to the point in the Seder where we begin saying Hallel. However, we do not say all of it at once. Rather, part is recited before the meal and part afterward. Now, the proper time to recite Hallel at the Seder is immediately after telling the story of the Exodus, when one sees himself as if he went out of Egypt and feels the need to express his gratitude like we spoke about in yesterday's Mishnah. The rabbis were concerned, however, that if the entire Hallel would be recited before the meal, the children would fall asleep before eating the matzah. They therefore established the practice of reciting only a small part of Hallel before the meal and continuing after the meal. The Mishnah cites a dispute as to which paragraphs of Hallel are said before the meal. Ad Echan Omer, the Mishnah begins, how much of Hallel does he recite before the meal? Bet Shammai Amrim, Bet Shammai say, Ad, until the words Ema Banim Smecha, a joyful mother of children, at the end of the first paragraph in Tehillim chapter 113. Now, since the second paragraph of Hallel mentions the Exodus, B'tzet Israel Mimitzrayim, when the Jews left Egypt, etc., Bet Shammai say that it should be postponed until later in the evening, as close to midnight as possible, because that is when the Egyptian firstborn were killed, and Paro pleaded with the Jews to leave, as the Tosefta says in chapter 10, Braita number 6. Bet Hillel Omrim, but Bet Hillel say, Ad Chalamish Lemayin Omayim, until the words, who turns the flint into a flowing fountain, at the end of the second paragraph. Now, the part of Hallel recited before the meal is followed by the blessing of Asher Ga'alanu, who redeemed us, in which we thank God for the redemption. Bet Hillel reasoned that since the second paragraph of Hallel describes the complete redemption, including the splitting of the sea, we should recite it before this blessing. The rest of Hallel, however, is saved for the end of the Seder, so that the children will remain awake long enough to eat the matzah. After the first part of Hallel, we make a blessing about our redemption. The Mishnah discusses the contents of this blessing. V'chotem big'ula. One concludes this part of the Haggadah, namely telling the story of the Exodus and reciting the first part of Hallel with the blessing about redemption. Rabbi Tarfon Omer, Rabbi Tarfon says, Asher ge'alanu ve'gal et avotenu mimitzrayim. This blessing states, Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who redeemed us and redeemed our forefathers from Egypt. Now, the Haggadah and some versions of the Mishnah's text include Vigianu alayla ze le'echol bo matzah maror, and enabled us to reach this night that we may eat on it matzah and maror. He begins the blessing with the phrase, Blessed are you, Hashem, v'lo yachotem, but he does not end the blessing with this phrase. Now, there are two types of blessings: short blessings, such as those that precede eating or the performance of a mitzvah, which contain only the single theme of gratitude. These blessings begin with the phrase, Blessed are you, Hashem, etc., but do not end with it, like Baruch Hashem, Borei Pri Ha'etz. Long blessings, such as Kiddush and the first blessing of Birkat Hamazon, which also include praise and requests, both start and end with Blessed are you, Hashem, etc., as the Gemara says at page 104b. The Rav explains, Rabbi Tarfon holds that the blessing of Asher Ga'alanu, who redeemed us, is a single expression of gratitude, and therefore it's a short blessing which begins but does not end with Blessed are you, Hashem. Rabbi Akiva Omer, but Rabbi Akiva says, Ken Hashem Elokeinu ve'Elokei avotenu yaginu lemoadim ve'lergalim acherim abayim likatenu shalom. After these words, who redeemed us and redeemed our forefathers, etc., we add, so Hashem, our God, and the God of our forefathers, bring us to other approaching holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and the pilgrimage festivals, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, in peace. Smechim b'vinyan irecha, happy in the rebuilding of your city, v'sasim b'avodotecha, and joyful in your service, v'nochal sham mina zevachim u'mina pesachim, and may we eat there from the Chagigah offerings and the Pesach offerings, etc. Ad Baruch Hashem Gal Yisrael, we continue until the end of the blessing, which states, Blessed are you, Hashem, who redeemed Israel. Now, the blessing further states, the Chagigah offerings and the Pesach offerings, whose blood will be sprinkled upon the sides of your altar for gracious acceptance, and we will thank you with a new song for our redemption, for the soul, and for the freeing of our souls. Now, according to Rabbi Akiva, the blessing is a long one, since it includes not only thanks for the past, but also prayers for the future, and it therefore both begins and ends with Blessed are you, Hashem. And the Rav does tell us, V'alcha ki Rabbi Akiva, The halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. That is the end of Mishnah Vav. Mishnah Zayin now continues. After saying the blessing of redemption, we drink the second cup of wine and we eat the matzah, maror, in the festive meal. This Mishnah describes the Seder as it continues after the meal. Mazgulo kos shlishi. They mix the third cup of wine for him. Mevarech al mizono, upon which he recites the blessing for his food, Birkat Hamazon. Rivi'i, they mix the fourth cup for him. Gomer alav et ha'alel, upon which he completes the Hallel. Ve'omer alav Birkat Ashir, and upon which he recites the blessing of the song. Now the Gemara on page 118a cites two opinions about what the Mishnah means by the blessing of the song. Some identify it as the blessing recited at the end of Hallel, which is Yalucha B'Chad Hashem, Melech Me'or al B'Tishbachot. That others say that it is the long prayer recited at the end of Pesukei de Zimran, Shabbat, and Yom Tov, which begins Ishmat Kol Chai and ends with the blessing of Ishtabach, which is B'Chad Hashem, Kel Melech Gadol B'Tishbachot. The prevailing custom is to recite both of these prayers at the Seder, as the Rav explains. Na'agu lememrenhu letarvayhu. And the Mishnah continues, of the 4 cups of wine, 2 are drunk before the meal and 2 after the meal. The Mishnah discusses whether one may drink between these 2 pairs of cups. Ben hakosot olalu, between these 2 pairs of cups, meaning during the meal. Im rotze lishtot ishteh, if he wants to drink more wine, he may do so, because one who drinks wine with food is unlikely to get drunk. Ben shlishi lerevi lo ishteh, however, between the 3rd and 4th cups, he may not drink extra wine, because he might indeed become drunk at that time when nothing is eaten. If he became drunk between the 3rd and 4th cups, he will be unable to finish the Hallel. Now, one is also forbidden to drink extra wine before the meal, between the 1st and 2nd cups, because one might become drunk then, since the wine is not accompanied by food, and he will be unable to finish the Seder, as the commentaries explain. And they also refers to Shulchan Aruch and Orach Chaim, chapter 473, Halacha 3. And that is an Abotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.